Please register your attendance with at here in the group chat, and we do automatic notes here. So if you want to add to the notes, you can do an add item and then your comment, and it will be added to the notes. Okay, continue to do add here as I talk. It'll sort itself out in the notes. So we're going to start with patch set merge criteria. So we had, was a meeting last week during ONF Connect. I think we had some meetings with some operators as well as ONF. And one thing we've been talking about is how do we improve different capabilities around our patch set merging, making sure that we improve overall the quality of our patch sets being merged or how we merge them, kind of the process, as well as making sure that we help ensure cherry picks as we go back and forth and get new cherry picks. So this document was produced by out of that meeting. And basically what we're doing is we're setting criteria and guidance as we go forward around patch sets. So I wanted to go over this briefly. I don't know if people had a chance to read it or not. A couple people have commented, but just to go over it. So there was going to be some criteria that actually, let me start a different way. The burden of the work around what is required for patch sets to be merged will continue to be on the owner of the patch set, the person creating the patch. So some very basic things that all patch sets must adhere to before they are merged, i.e. We're going to have to require a clean static analysis, usually activated by the make lint command, and we're going to add extended lint via the SCA target or go lint. It's not Zach. What's the name of the other tool that adds more detailed lint? Go lint or something, but it's not. Anyway, doesn't matter. There's going to be a more advanced static analysis done that gives more information. Clean build. We did find an issue that had one of the projects actually didn't build. Those were standard are going to be enhanced over kind of the standards. We're going to require a clean end-to-end with a simulator and eventually clean end-to-end with a physical lab before a patch set will be considered verified. Additionally, because we're having patch sets that have to be cherry-picked between two branches, and we're already seeing patch sets either not cherry-picked or cherry-picked out of order, which makes cherry-pick harder. We're going to require that the patch set be ready on both branches before it's unmerged on one. So the process I expect will be develop your patch set against whichever branch you're going to develop it against, get it reviewed, run it through all the requirements, and when that patch set's essentially ready to be submitted, cherry pick it onto the other branch and get that ready to go as well. The idea being that when we submit a patch, you can essentially go to one branch, submit, go to the other branch, submit. Any questions on that so far? Okay. We're going to get as much of this automated as we can. So essentially we'll have verification flags for the end, all the unit tests, the lint tests, both the physical and simulated builds. So you should see hopefully little green check marks as each of those things are taken care of. Moving on, we're also going to ask those people who review, and particularly those people who have +2 capability, to have a little more rigor around some of the review process. And Just a second. Not sure if my comment got out there. Let me just, sorry, keep a track of notes here too. There we go. That rigor includes that we're asking people to review it, that as you review the package, or patch set, if you see that the patch set substantially changes the behavior, or essentially because of that patch set, you believe README is updated, to make sure that README is updated, and if not, again, push back on the owner of the patch set to update the data. Make sure the patch set's associated with a JIR ID, and that the patch set is a single change patch set. In other words, we're trying to eliminate the idea of a patch set being a bundle of changes. It makes it easier both for cherry picking as well as just for understanding what's going on, to have a single change patch set. We're making sure that patch sets now include unit tests, and this even can start today, even though we haven't got kind of the formalization around that. As you submit bugs to the code base, please update a unit test, add a unit test. It doesn't even have to be directly related to your patch. We have a backlog of unit tests that need to be done. So if we can get them sprinkled in with some of these patch sets, that would be helpful to cover that backlog. When you are submitting a bug, if you can submit a unit test, or do submit a unit test that exercises that bug if you can. If that bug can't be exercised via the unit test process, then we're also going to be asking developers to submit patch sets to integration test, or additions to the integration test. The idea, every bug fix should have a test associated with it to help with regression testing, as well as helping ensure that it is fixed.
So David.
Yes, sir.
So do we know how, I was asked by a question is, do we know how to find out which patch set has not gone through the unit test?
Well, it's not so much patch sets that haven't gone through the unit test. It's
or fix or whatever, right?
The code has been written has not gone through unit testing.
But how can we tell which code has not been gone through that?
So
how can we batch
so
to the
somewhere
we submitted?
Yeah, one of these. Which one is it? Here is a code coverage report for the Volta OpenOLT adapter. So you can see that it is about 3% code coverage. And I think if you follow down these reports, you can actually drill down and, I don't know if it goes line by line. Apparently it doesn't.
Currently does not go line by line, but
or function by function.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we'll have to figure that out. I mean, you could look at the code obviously and see which functions are called from the test code. When linting will do line by line coverage and color. It'd be nice if if we can get a deeper data readout from the code coverage tools. Again, you can look at the code. I mean, these reports give you hints of where things are or are not covered, and you can go look at them as a start. I don't know if we can get the tools to document essentially which lines aren't covered or which methods haven't been covered or not. But
I think that's a path issue. I can look into it.
Okay.
It's the path relative to where I can take a look at it.
Okay.
Practically speaking, though, given the low percentage, you could probably pick anything, and it likely doesn't have a unit test.
Yes, that's very true.
But I think, Matt, I discussed this with you. It's easy for someone who are not a co-contributor and then come back in and then do the unit test, or whether that's something necessary to do.
I mean, for somebody who's going to be introduced in the project, it's a good way to get an idea of how things work. And finding the unit test is as simple as looking through the code and looking for a function definition. And if there isn't a corresponding function definition underscore test or however the tests are named in some other directory, then write one. Pass in the arguments that need to be passed in that make sense for that function, and then make sure the test runner runs it. And then repeat for every function defined in every line or in every file.
Good. Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. We're asking people to step up their game a little bit around documentation as well, to make sure not only all the public functions, variables, etc., are documented, kind of go standards, but that some of those comments are meaningful. In other words, if your function is called foo, don't just say foo, function foo, right? Detail. As well as you go through the reviews, please make sure that any code blocks that aren't reasonably understood, and I understand that is kind of a subjective term, but we're asking developers of patch sets or code to document those areas of the code that are not easy to understand, and we're asking reviewers to verify that that's been done. So there is a little bit more being asked from the reviewers before they plus to it. And we believe if this can happen, we'll just get a little bit better quality of our patch sets and supportability of the code going forward. Just to reiterate, it is the responsibility of the patch set owner to meet the requirements, to ensure things are cherry-picked. So we're not asking reviewers to do the documentation or add the bits. We're just asking them, if they see the bits are missing, push back in the review process and ask the owner to do it. So that also means things like, if you're a developer and you have your patch set happens to get a -1 or a -2, don't be offended. It's not a personal attack. It's just putting a -1 there versus a 0 helps other reviewers understand that this patch set has some outstanding issues that need to be addressed, and will help accidentally people submitting patches. Because if someone says 0, you don't necessarily understand that there are outstanding issues. If you do a -1, that can be interpreted there are outstanding issues that need to be addressed. Furthermore, we're going to keep the JIRAs open, i.e. not closed, until the patch sets are merged. Just helps us keep track of things, because it helps keep JIRA and essentially Garrett in sync around that. Any questions on that?
Yeah, David, this is Suchitra.
Yes.
Quick question on the bug fix, the patch set representing a bug fix, the second bullet, where we are saying that when there is no unit test, if there is a system test, the patch set should include a system integration test case. So here, I assume that here we are still talking about integration tests using simulators, right?
Well, one thing yes, I am talking about that. One thing we're striving for in terms of system integration tests is that the scripts can be run both against a simulated target as well as a physical target. So when a developer adds to the system to integration tests, the hope is, again, that test can be developed such that it'll run against either target. If a developer doesn't have physical hardware to run the test against, it gets a little harder, but they can still submit a test pre-patch set tested, I guess, against only the simulator. But when a patch set goes through verification process, we'll eventually have both a verification step against a simulated target and a hardware target. So the patch sets should be verified against each before they get to submit ready, if you will. Does that make sense? I know it kind of bubbles around there a little bit.
Yeah, I got that. So basically, we are targeting for both platforms. Yes. That's what we are trying to say.
Yes.
Okay. So probably maybe we might need more discussion on the physical hardware. That depends. Yeah, so we can take that later, but I just wanted
Okay.
to clarify.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments?
So we're not saying that currently we need to test on physical hardware, right, before we submit code?
So it is given that not everybody has physical hardware to test, and so if you don't have physical hardware test, it is just, well, impossible to test on hardware until you hit the submit, before you submit. Eventually, and we're working on this right now, we will have system integration tests run as part of the patch set verification process. And the plan is to have those system verification tests run both against the simulated as well against the physical hardware. So in Garrett, you know how you get the little automatic +1 for verification. In theory, once this is all automated, you will get a +1 for the simulated verification as well as a +1 for the physical hardware verification. So even if you personally do not have hardware that you can do testing on, your patch set will be run on hardware before it's verified and it's able to be submitted. That make sense?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
One thing this is all going to do is slow things down, and everybody's aware of that, right? It's going to take more time to do some of the verification. We're asking people to be a little more vigilant in their reviews and asking them to do a little bit more. So we understand that it will take more time, and we're asking contributors to also allocate more time to do reviews as well. It's just felt that this kind of more stringent requirements, if you will help us get to a more stable version of Volta. Any other questions? Or if not, we'll go to the next item on the agenda.
This is Girish here.
Yes.
Especially in the case of OpenOLT agent, there is no unit test framework as of today. And neither we have a framework where we can verify changes on the OpenOLT agent through a real hardware, by automation. So until such a framework is ready, I think changes will continue to go without any unit tests or any automation test.
Okay.
I think there's a split here. I mean, unit tests can be written to verify internal functionality. Like you can just say these functions do this thing and we expect them to work this way. So writing those standalone unit tests is important, but it sounds like we also need to get to the point where we're exercising these functions in some sort of end-to-end or integration test. And so the tests currently are testing like the full workflow. If we need to test individual parts of the workflow in an integration test, I don't think we've really come to a conclusion of how to make that happen, but we can definitely do that.
Yeah, thanks. So the point I was trying to say is OpenOLT agent currently doesn't have a framework for unit tests at all.
Oh, you're talking about the agent side that runs on the
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
So, and that's written in C, I believe, or
C and C++.
So I think as part of the ongoing support and development of the OpenOLT agent, it would be to identify how unit tests, as a start, unit tests will be written around that. It's been a while since I've worked in C++, but I've got to believe there are unit test frameworks.
Yeah, Google has a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would create a JIRA to establish the unit test framework, and I think it's just needs to be done.
Yeah. Okay. Let me take a look at it. At least
Okay.
I'd start with creating a JIRA in the first place.
Yep. Thanks.
Probably also worth bringing up that the protos that are used by the agent are copies of what's typically now all used in the Volta Protos repo, and converging all of that would help on some of this out of sync issue we run into from time to time.
Yes, yeah, we need to look at it. I think OpenID agent is keeping its own copy of the protos.
Yeah. Cool.
I'll create a Jira for that too.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And one comment I have in this section is that the path set, whenever we are trying to merge the path set, I understand that there are already end-to-end integration tests, and then we pass them and then we commit the patch. But I'm not sure that every patch set would require a physical hardware test. So maybe that is really a strict requirement here, that whatever we are putting here.
I think that's a good requirement. Every patch set, every commit has to have a unit test. There shouldn't be an exception. If we'll try to start making exceptions, I think we're going to lose the battle again.
I think there's one exception, and that's documentation changes.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody is making changes to documentation or outside of the code or those sorts of things. We need to have an escape hatch, but there's not needed in most other cases.
Yeah, I know I was not talking about unit tests. Unit tests are good, and then end-to-end simulated tests are good. I was talking about physical end-to-end tests, that if it is required for each and every patch set.
Yes, the plan, the current plan is to require a physical integration test for every patch set, with the exception, one exception, as Zach was pointing out, around documentation. The issue is it's not really, it can't really be predicted, other than documentation changes, if a code change is going to have an impact on a physical test. And so the idea was, because you can't really determine that, we run the physical test on every one. We also wanted to be able to ensure that because patch sets can go over many iterations, until we have adequate hardware resources available, the question was, how can we minimize hardware-based tests when it wouldn't be helpful. Let's say, patch set submitted. Someone reviews it, I edit it. Someone reviews it, I edit it. Someone reviews it, I edit it, and we go through this thing 10 times. We don't want to do a physical test on each one of those iterations necessarily, because we have resources. So what we thought about is, initially, or until we get enough resources where this is not an issue, we would still require a physical integration test on the patch set, but it would be manually kicked off or manually initiated once the author of the patch set felt that the patch set had stabilized and is no longer going over iterations. So again, that was just an optimization, really. But the requirement still is that each patch set minus documentation would require that. And again, we understand that's a bigger burden.
Okay.
But the upside is once Jenkins is able to do this on submit, it makes this a lot easier.
Yes. Sean, to your question about OLT agent for BAL 3.1, the Brigade itself was established against BAL 2.6. As of yesterday, I heard some talk about BAL 3.1 as a kind of a requirement. I think I need to follow up on that and figure that out.
For what it's worth, I think it may be required. I know with the CIBA 2 release, the reason CIBA 2.0 is called alpha is because of BAL issues. So,
Yep.
and just some of the things I've seen as well. And in terms of testing, there are certain things with clearing flows, clearing queues, clearing schedulers that don't quite work the way you'd expect. So we might have to consider BAL 3.1 as part of stable.
That is kind of what I've been hearing. I need to do another verification on that before before that becomes kind of rock solid in my opinion.
Sure, or at
I think
least entertain workarounds in the agent to kind of get us there. I know that sounds like a dirty word, but you know, one or the other.
Yep. Makes sense. Pardon me. Makes sense. Okay, I'm gonna assume it does. All right, then, if there are no further questions, one last call, and then we'll go to the next agenda item. All right. Next agenda item, patch set difference report. Let's go to the real report. So Zach wrote a tool that looks and compares the master branch and the Volta 2.1 branch based on change set IDs, which are included in the commits messages. And he generates a report that basically says this change ID is in one branch and not in the other branch. This basically gives us a basis to say which patch sets have not been cherry picked between the branches, and then from that we can determine if a given patch set needs to be cherry picked, as well as gives us a way to go back and put pressure on the owners to actually do the cherry picks. So this is the current report run this morning. You can see the first column, which basically says which repository, second branch, and then owner, and then patch set ID, comment, all those type of things. So in the Volta Go, we have 2 patch sets that need to be resolved in terms of cherry picking. In OpenOLT adapter, something like 4, and OpenONU adapter, something like 3. So what I'm
We're not seeing what you're sharing.
Oh, you're not seeing what I'm sharing. All right. Well, that would be a problem. I think that is because I was sharing my browser and that was not in the browser. So let's go back to share. All right. There you go. Can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay. So I will be posting this at least weekly to that other repository. I haven't updated it yet for today. I'm also going to start sending some emails out based on the owner of the patch set. We're really looking for resolution, which just means, look, if this patch set isn't a bug fix and therefore doesn't need to be cherry picked, we just need to know that to take it off this list. If this patch set has already been cherry picked without, or has already, the changes in the patch set have already been copied over to the other branch, it just wasn't done as a cherry pick. Again, just need to know that with some details like what is a patch set that actually includes it. There are some items on this list that also have been cherry picked, but the cherry pick has not been merged or reviewed or merged. So again, the emphasis, or it is the owner's responsibility of a patch set to help guide that patch set and its cherry pick all the way through the process. So if the issue has been cherry picked but not reviewed, merged, it is now kind of the owner's responsibility to help. Hey, go nag someone if they haven't reviewed it yet, right? And just help it get through that process. So I'll send some emails out to that effect. One thing I did note, and just be sure that as you submit patch sets in the comment, please put the JIRA ID for that patch set, just so we get tracking across the tool set. Any questions about this?
David, I just need some clarification. You're saying the first item, you said the bugs does not need to be cherry picked?
No, bugs do need to, well, hopefully bug fixes need to be cherry picked. Bugs happen naturally.
No, bug fix. Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know, and I haven't gone into a deep dive on any of these issues personally. So I know some of the, at least one of the items on this list has already been cherry picked. It's just that the cherry pick hasn't been reviewed or merged, and we're just asking the owner to follow up on that and make sure it is cherry picked and merged. Others may not have been cherry picked, so we're asking the owner to go do that cherry pick, create that cherry pick, and then have it merged. If the owner has already incorporated the changes from one branch to the other branch in a different way, we just need to know about that so that we can take it off this review list, right? That we know that's already been covered. All right. Any other questions? Okay. As I said, right. Let's go back to share. I don't know how to. There you go. I will be putting the report in this GitHub, so you can go to the GitHub and look at the README. I just need to update it with the new format, so that we have all the different columns. So you'll be able to see it in this GitHub as well. And I may, at least for the time being, do some daily postings to the Slack channel. I hate to be a nag, but just need to clean up these loose ends before we move forward. All right, any other questions before I move on? All right, Jira. So if I look at the open issues, we currently have 78 open issues labeled stabilization. We're going to be asking people, and in some cases, there's beginning a process. A process is being developed within. You may have heard the term Tiger Team being thrown about by ONF. The process of assigning bugs to some individuals will also be taking place, and ONF is working on a plan for that through the Tiger Team. But the idea is that the Stabilization Brigade will be tasked, or those people that are working on the Stabilization Brigade will be tasked to kind of walk through this list based on priority and whittle it down until it goes away, which is a separate issue, kind of this bug fix from new features that will be introduced into the master branch. So again, right now we have 78 open issues, 2 blockers. We just need to ensure some of these are cleaned up if they've already been solved, if they've already been addressed. If they haven't, we just need to work on this list. So if you find yourself having free time, and I know that's a rare thing, please go back to this list and assign yourself an issue and take it on. What I will ask people is, you don't need to assign yourself an issue until you've really got it on your schedule. Until you don't assign it because you think it necessarily belongs to you and you'll eventually get to it. Assign it when you assign it to yourself when you know you're going to have cycles to work on it. That way, the higher priority issues will be open for other people to take on if they have free time. Any questions on that? Okay. Thanks, Joe, for you put a filter. Zach put together a dashboard for the Stabilization Brigade, and you can see it here. It's just a nice little kind of a one-page way to kind of get an overview of what's going on with the project, with the stabilization work. That's posted in the notes as well if you want to take a look at that. If you have suggestions or changes to the dashboard, please let us know and we can figure out how we can do that. Again, we're just trying to put information that's helpful out there. And as we go forward, we hope to see this gap closed. All right, any other questions about JIRA going forward or right now? Okay. Last item I have on my agenda was about code coverage. I didn't look at the other projects. I just ran out of time, to be honest. But the important thing is we are still about 20% code coverage on Volta, 3% on the OpenOLT adapter, and that is less than we would like. So as I stated earlier, as you submit bug fixes, we're asking reviewers now to verify bug fixes include unit tests. So as you submit bug fixes, please add unit tests. If you feel like it, you can add unit tests that not only relate, well, if add a unit test that relates to your bug fix, but also if you feel like it, add a unit test that doesn't relate to your bug fix, just so we can slowly bump up that code coverage and get better unit test coverage for our code. Again, I'm not just looking to bump up the number. Statistics are great, but they can sometimes also enforce unexpected behaviors. We're looking for not just unit tests, but unit tests that actually are useful. So just keep that in mind as you submit code. All right. If there are no questions on that, that is the end of my agenda. If someone else has anything they want to discuss, please let me know. Any other topic that we think we need to cover today? Okay. Any other questions then? All right. Then I will give you back some time because I am not a fan of having meetings just because we can. And we'll see you guys on the Slack channel. If you have any questions, you can post them there as well. I'll post the recording of the meeting as well as the minutes as soon as I can.
Thank you, David.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, bye.